This is going to come as a shock. Different people are different. Aren't you glad you went to college for that? So one of the issues that deals with how we go through this process or how we're affected going through this process is just our personality. And one of the things that's kind of fun when you really get into psychology is all of the stuff that we know for a fact that we learned in high school is there's a lot more to it than that. So like you've all heard of the 5 senses, right? There's actually like 20 or 30 senses. So like one of the senses is vision. We all know about vision, right? Sight. But sight is more than just sight. Sight is the ability to detect color, the ability to detect motion, the ability to detect outlines, the ability to detect contrast. Those are all, what was I talking about? Doesn't matter. Those are all senses that we have that are related to sight. So anyways, 2 of the aspects of personality that are very relevant to marketing is this idea of an actual self-concept and an ideal self-concept. The actual self-concept is how you actually feel about yourself. I do not know why this keeps going off, but it is annoying me. Yeah, but I don't know how it does that. Yeah, okay. How many PhDs does it take to change a light bulb? I had that once where I was in the yard trying to move the sprinkler, and it was running. So I was like, it's one of these sprinklers that goes like that, and I was running in while it was going the other way and trying to pull it the other way, and my wife comes out and she takes a hose and she kinks it. And she goes, my genius husband. So now that we're totally off track, but actual self is how we feel about ourselves, and ideal self is how we would like others to see us. And again, getting into that social consumption, in a consumer culture, we represent ourselves to others through the products that we buy, through the services that we use, and we affirm our own actual self-concept, again, through the products that we buy, through the products that we use. I was just reading an article. Okay, now, do I want to make changes to my PC? You bet I do. I have no idea what's going on here. I guess maybe I shouldn't be teaching this class then. He has no idea what's going on, and yet he's talking to us. So the idea is that your ideal self-concept is the way you want to be perceived by others. Your actual self-concept is how you actually feel. And again, products and services that we consume reinforce those behaviors. I was just reading about Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, how he has this amazing diet that he's on that allows him to be a superstar at over 30 years of age, because everybody knows once you're past 30 it's all over. But again, that's the diet that he chooses reinforces his actual self-concept. And then some of the traits of personality, how people are different from each other. Some people are more adventurous, innovativeness. Some people are more confident. Other people are less confident. Some people like to be with people. Some people do not like to be with people. And there's a whole bunch of them. The point is that different people are different, and understanding those differences can help us both reach them as well as work with each other. Which leads us to the first extra credit opportunity. Yay! One of the ways in business, there's a personality test sometimes that they use just to look at how to work with others. The one that's most commonly used is the Myers-Briggs Personality Inventory, which looks at personality in terms of 4 dimensions: extrovert, introvert. What I want to do is I've given a link to a very abbreviated version of the Myers-Briggs on the class website. And if you go ahead and take that personality inventory, next time let's take a look at what this class is all about and maybe talk about how that can be used in business. Yes?
If I already did it, can I just reprint it?
If you redid it, can you just reprint it? Yes, you're disclosing to myself that perhaps I have experience with the Myers-Briggs, maybe even from this class. I took the full version many years ago, and this one's, it's not like the full version. The full version costs money, which is something you want to do. Anyways, if you go ahead and do that, then we can talk about that next time and just get a sense as to how we might use personality in business. Another interesting psychological phenomenon is this idea of perception. And we talked in a lot of times about how in marketing it's not value, it's perceived value. Perception is everything. So let's talk about perception. And perception is simply the way that we interpret the world. Our senses can be thought of as transducers. As transducers, they take stimuli from the external environment and translate that into chemical signals that actually go to your brain, and it's only in your brain that those chemical signals get turned into meaning. So for example, I don't have anything that's of color to hold up here. So let's pretend that my shirt is red. Well, my shirt, what color is my shirt? Red. Yeah, does the screen door work over? Let's not pretend. What color is my shirt?
Light blue.
Light blue. Okay. So we all agree it's light blue, but do we have any idea that we're actually seeing the same color? All we know is that we've all agreed through socialization to call this representation in our brain light blue, but who knows what you're actually seeing. This is the idea of perception is totally an internal experience. One of the issues in perception is this idea of just noticeable difference. There was back in the 50s, there was this big scandal about subliminal advertising where I was inserting stimuli into advertisements that were causing people to motivate unconsciously, and they weren't even aware that these stimuli were going on. And it's an interesting concept. That theory has been largely debunked. But the idea is that unless a neuron fires in your brain, it didn't happen. So that's called the liminal level, the actual level of a brain firing. In marketing, we need a little more substantial impact than that. So we talk about a just noticeable difference, which is the amount of difference that would get your attention. So for example, in pricing, rule of thumb, 20% difference in price will get people's attention. So the idea is if I wanted to put something on sale, if I put it on sale for 30%, I'm wasting money because 20% was enough to get people's attention. And if I want to raise prices, let's raise it 5% at a time rather than 20% because they're going to notice 20%, but they're less likely to pay attention to. So again, that's kind of a big leap, taking it from internal brain cellular structure to macro environmental level. But there is some evidence to support the concept of a just noticeable difference. The closest thing that there is to subliminal advertising is something that is, I can't remember the, Petty and Cacioppo did a lot of work in the 90s on low involvement learning. And what low involvement learning is all about is even though you're not paying attention to something, and we'll talk about selective perception in a second, there's stimuli that are making into your brain and making impressions. And even though you're not paying attention to them, those impressions are being made. And the idea is that if at some point in the future you are starting to pay attention to something that's related to that, remember we talked about internal search memory first. So even though I don't have, so for example, if I have never bought a car, I'm not paying any attention to car advertisements, right? But I'm seeing car advertisements all the time. And some of that is getting in just because it's, I have to, oh, that's a car advertisement, let's not pay attention to that. That was paying attention. That makes a little bit of impression, and then when you come time to look for a car, the first place you look is memory, and you do have some residual stuff in there related to cars that you go to first. That's called the familiarity effect. We'll talk about that in a second. But that's probably the closest thing to subliminal advertising. It's not that we sneak it in below the threshold of perception, but just recognizing that if you're not paying attention, there are some stimuli that still get through, and those do have an impact because when you do memory-based decision making, that's in your memory, and that's always the first place you go.